trust can be a feeling, but trust can also be a characteristic where it, once again, it's a staple to like what molds a relationship, because without trust, like that relationship can't flourish, because if I can't trust you, and then I'm not even taking the time to acknowledge that I can't trust you, I'm not only setting myself up for failure, setting up this friendship or relationship up for failure, and setting you up for failure.
Welcome everybody to the Rally Cry Podcast. My name is Angel.
My name is Darito.
By the way, if you don't know, it's Angel
and Tyler.
And I'm grateful to being here with you guys. Honestly, it's always rejuvenating to be here. And you guys are here because you are on this journey with mental health, self-improvement, understanding like what is important to understand. You know, within yourself, you know, people around, comprehend, understanding other people's social behaviors, understanding others so that you can love yourself more, loving yourself so that you can love others more, and etc. So we're going to get into today's topic. And it's kind of like one of the biggest things that we kind of like struggle with, and that is trusting someone. Trusting someone and like trusting yourself. And like what happens is like we first don't even know what trust is though. Like I think a lot of things is like what? Is
trust more than the 5 words that it is? I mean, the 5 letters that it is?
I'm about to say
like,
5 words, what?
I mean, no, it could be broken down into 5 words.
It could.
5 principles. Stay tuned.
So, I think it's always important, if we're going to be talking about trust, right, is good to understand the definition of what trust is. And the actual definition is a firm belief in the reliability, right? Truth, ability, and the strength of someone or something. So I'll say it one more time because I kind of messed up. Firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, and or strength of someone or something. That's the actual definition.
That's a lot of, okay, in a good way, dependency on something, like depending on this trait, you know, in order to continue existing, or not to continue existing because our life has so much meaning. But if I'm going to continue existing with said person or said object, I must have faith and rely, and it must be reliable enough for me to like believe in the fact that I can trust this.
Right. And there's like stages of trust, and we're not going to get much into it. I think it's important to understand like what is trust, and some people might be like, bro, like I know what trust is. Like, what are you trying to say? Like, I just need to feel like, you know, I could trust them. Well, like feeling is one thing, but then like actually like having the proof that you can trust them, because, you know, what happens in life is like there's so much deception. And, like, we can't be fooled off the deception that we see. Like, we think that if someone comes into, like, our life, or, you know, we're just chilling with someone and, like, they give us this impression that they're cool and et cetera, like, we should automatically be giving out our trust to them. And that's not necessarily true, because with trust, it's a quality. And, therefore, like, the other person needs to be able to nourish certain things so that they can build that trust with you. And you're not going to always trust someone the same as others. Like, you know, you might trust this person for certain things and someone else differently. And it's almost the same thing like we were talking in our previous video when we were talking about boundaries. Like, when you have boundaries, you have certain boundaries you are with someone else. And it's the same thing with trust. It's kind of like almost similar when it comes to trusting someone. Like, there's certain things that someone else has to prove themselves as and give you reasons to trust. It's not the other way around where like, oh, you should just give me reasons not to trust and I just completely trust you from the get-go. That's not how it works. Like, it's the same way, like, you give me reasons to not trust and also to trust. So like trust is a quality, so therefore saying like it's like a garden, and like think of it as in like, you know, someone comes into your garden, if you let them, as far as you trusting them,
you let them by the fence because there's a fence protecting that garden.
Exactly. But if you just let someone in and they just pick your flower, then they're just taking all those flowers of trust, and then you have a garden of empty flowers.
Weeds.
And that'd be no. And I think it's just important that we have the understanding that there is certain ways that someone have to do certain things to trust, to be trusted. And I know you got a couple things there, like what a trust is. So like, let me hear something, because
if there's one thing I'm gonna say for the anime community out there, whoever has watched Full Metal Alchemist, you know, there's such a thing as equivalent exchange, and not saying that equivalent exchanges primarily all around in our life, but it's pretty prominent. And one thing that I wrote down was like how our trust in who or what is determined by the belief of certainty and the familiarity we have in this connection. Every pivotal piece that built that foundation of trust is equally indispensable. So every trait that comes with trust, like with honesty, like with transparency, because transparency, you want to be able to understand this person. And if you can't relate with this person, as Angel was mentioning, like with boundaries, there are going to be certain stories and characteristics of someone that's going to make us feel like, man, I belong, like me and this person relate together so much because this relationship was able to form. But then it's like, you can't judge a book by its cover. So what if this person is trying to deceive you? And then this disappointment comes around and it's like, why did I trust this person? And all these other things that go into like this hurtful process of like, damn, now I can't trust ever again. It's like, oh no, my bros got me. Like, nah, they got my back. Like, I know that because I feel like they do. They've been here since day one. But a feeling can only be so temporary. It's like, an amount of experiences can happen, but easily we never may know what someone's agenda may truly be. You know, they could tell us one thing, but then it's like actions speak louder than words, and it goes far into the things that we do. And and it's like one quote that I was able to make up on my own was, you know, one slight movement too far to the left or right and the pyramid collapses. So like if you're playing Jenga or when the Egyptians were making pyramids, it's like, you know, not for nothing, they trusted each other to make this, you know, solid construction, found a strong base of a foundation. But then if somebody's too careless to like, it's not really a big deal, so I'll just place it like this, or I won't put that much, you know, glue or cement, or whatever they were using back then. But then because of that, why do you think, okay, look, hidden fact, you know, Snapple fact. There's no 13th floor in a lot of apartment buildings because apparently something always spooky was happening. So if we're going to get paranormal, okay, if you want to believe in that stuff, so be it. Go crazy. Not judging. But we need that in the soundboard. But overall, like in 13th floors, either there was a screw missing, a pipe, ledge, wedge, anything was missing. So with trust is like, okay, I have enough history and reliability on the fact that 13th floors in apartments, buildings, or anything never works. So I'm going to trust that moving on forward for the rest of life, we do not need to build a 13th floor. And look, now by being disappointed from what you thought was going to be right, now you have a newfound of trust. And now rather than being scared and trying to prevent anything, you are preparing yourself a lot more assertively in order to trust moving on forward, because our trust, our very makeup of our morals and understandings of things are going to constantly change because of how life is ever changing. Life never stops changing.
Right.
And I could say there's plenty of different behaviors to point out to. But, you know, I want to let you, like, you know, what you think of what I was saying, because I think that when it comes to trust, it's a give or take, and you have to give a little bit of trust in order to solidify that you could trust this person with that amount of trust and then keep on rewarding them. So it's kind of like, you know, I am rewarding you, but then at the same time, I'm trusting you to have this little bit of trust because I want to give you this trust. As confusing as that sounds.
Well, I first want to say, like, for anyone that is listening or anyone that is watching us, you know, just, you know, subscribe to us if you guys are really interested in the things that we've been talking about. So that's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Cast, Castbox, anything like that. You can also watch us on YouTube. And then, you know, you can also follow us on Instagram, where we have clips and we just get straight to the point about certain things that we've been talking about in these, like, long segments. Because I know sometimes y'all be busy. So yeah, just feel free to, like, you know, follow us and subscribe to us to whatever platform that is. But yeah, going into what Tyler was saying, I definitely agree with, like, you know, everything has a balance of things, and like you can't I think when there's trust in there, like, it kind of also brings up the fact of, like, how someone carries themselves and, like, you understanding that process as well. Because, like, for example, like, I forgot to put a screw, or I'm just going to lay this here or whatever. Like, it's sometimes, like, trust is not careless. Like, if you really want to go really deep into it, like, trust is, like, has so many qualities. And some of the qualities I have like 5. Like, there's vulnerability, honesty, faith, patience, and hope. And like, you know, with vulnerability, like you want to be vulnerable, but maybe not too vulnerable, because then that could be detrimental to either your significant partner or even to yourself. Like you might think like, well, what is too much vulnerability? Well, to a point where like you're too sensitive to anything that might come up. Like sometimes there's certain things that you have to deal with on your own, and that is okay. As far as honesty, you had to be honest with yourself, not with anyone else that you're encountering with. You got to be honest with yourself. Faith, obviously have the faith of like, you know, things can obviously have a better outcome going on forward, like how you were saying, oh, you know, 13th floor, you know, I had this history for it and I can't ignore that history. I want to be more aware to it, but you know, going on forward, I'm gonna just have faith that, you know, when we don't do this 13th floor, you know, there's not gonna be any like paranormal activity, which is a great analogy to what Tyler was saying.
Casualties. And
patience is important, because when you trust someone, you kind of go through this evaluation process. Like you put them to this kind of test. Like, okay, I'm gonna give this person this assignment, and with this assignment, I'm gonna see how I can trust them after the outcome. So let's say if I lend Tyler my car, right? I don't know exactly how he will be with my car because I never let him have my car. But from all the other qualities he's given me for me to trust him, if it's like getting something for me, doing me a favor, and it's not always about just doing favors, but it's also like, you know, having some form of dependency, not feeling all dependent on you, but like, okay, well, you know, he did me these favors and I could trust him to be alone in my house and not take anything or anything like that. Stuff like that. Those are things that people think about. Those are like the foundation of trust. Like, won't steal from me, won't talk behind my back. And that's where we go into loyalty and stuff like that, because loyalty needs trust.
Loyalty.
Oh, and it's really just to say, like, trust, it has, like, there's compliments to it.
Yeah.
And so, well, after I give Tyler my car, you know, I'm trusting that he won't crash it. So I'm having a standard of what to expect. It's not saying I'm full on expectation, but I have an idea of what to expect, because, you know, me trusting someone, I have a standard to go by. Right. If it's lower than that standard, then it's like, okay, well, I can't trust him fully on this particular area. So let's say if Tyler were to come back, which this didn't happen, just to clarify, I did actually let Tyler drive my car one time when I was busy doing something else. And, you know, I completely trust him with that. He didn't crash it. Thank God. And I trust him fully in that area. And so he met that standard and could potentially go above that standard of trusting in that. Right. Yep. So it's just to say, like, when you are trusting someone, like, it has to build and you have to go through this evaluation. Like, give them the trust and see what they do with it. Yeah. It's like you literally are giving someone something, and once you give them it, see how they treat it. Like, do they just throw it out? They just don't care? Are they careless? And see how it is. And like, the thing is that if they're not trustworthy in this part, sometimes depending on what it is can determine how they are in other things.
Yeah, and it could be excessively challenging for them.
Right, exactly. And I really think too, like, I think what is interesting too is that when it comes to having interactions with other people as well, if it's strangers or even if it's someone you may know, it's like 1 out of 5 interactions, like, we are lied to. So what was that?
Oh no, because when you said strangers, I was doing stranger danger.
Oh, you just put a plus sign? I was like, what am I, demon?
Jesus?
Yeah. Oh, man.
Jesus may protect me at all times. God bless.
So, yeah, one out of 5 interactions we are lied to. And the quote that I like from Jay Shetty, by the way, I'm going to just pop it out right now.
Who?
Jay Shetty.
The monk who?
This book right here.
Ooh.
Think Like a Monk.
Sheesh.
I got to say, like, I'm not getting paid for this. I'm just saying. But I read this whole book, and this is a great book to read. I'll leave it down in the description for you guys. But
beautiful face right there too.
Huh?
Beautiful face right there too.
Oh yeah, yeah. Look at that smile. Look at that. But he does actually talk about a couple of things about trust and stages of trust. And there was one quote that he said in there that I really liked, and it says, "If the seed of trust is not planted effectively in the beginning, we grow weed of mistrust and betrayal." And I was like, damn.
And before you continue that point, one thing that I really like that Angel was mentioning was just like how there's a dependency that comes with trust. And if we're gonna be using our phonics properly and get really picky with the vocabulary, depending on how the situation turns out, because I'm lending. You see the ing that I'm doing? So depending on how the situation plays out, and because I'm lending you this amount of trust, now I will like to continue proceeding with this equivalent exchange of like back and forth, because it's not a full expectation, but it's like I have to set some kind of standard of expectation where, okay, I'm trusting you to do this, so now I can expect you to follow through, because me even putting you in this position or me getting this far with you already took a lot to begin with, whether it was a couple hours, a couple days, a couple weeks, or maybe even a year. And as Angel mentioned, it's just like the amount of trust that I had built up into leading up to that point where he let me use the car that time, it was able to even extend the amount of trust that he's willing to give me for the future going on forward, because now he's like, oh, so if he could, take care of a car and not crash, and it's like, that's several thousands of dollars, like, or even $100, depending on what is broken or anything like that, like that goes far into it. So if someone could be responsible with that, then it's like someone may be responsible enough to take care of your house while you're going on vacation.
Right.
Maybe take care of your pet, and knowing how a pet, that's everybody's loving. It's loving, it's enduring, and it's tolerating. So it's something that, trust has so many different facets that you could possibly get confused with, like, what is trust? And depending on what bad experience may come from that, you may try to formulate your own version of trust because you don't like society's or the way this world's construct of trust is.
Yeah, and adding into like what you were saying a little bit earlier, like, if I trust you, I kind of like, expect a little bit in return. That's where like it should become mutual. Yeah. And that's one of the stages of trust, like mutual trust.
Say that again. Mutual
trust.
Mutual trust.
Mutual trust.
Love that. Yeah. Love that. Mutual trust. Write it down.
So like if I trust you, it makes me feel like, you should trust me. You know what I mean? Because like everybody has a definition of what they see as trust and how they trust, and they have a process of it. But, that's kind of like the next step after that. Like, first it's just like, okay, we have similar qualities. And, okay, with that, I can, somewhat kind of try to build that trust. Then after that, there's mutual trust. And then after that, I forgot what was the next one. I think it's conceptual.
Oh,
yes, conceptual trust.
Open that J. Shetty book and get that thing out.
I think it's conceptual trust.
Get that thing out.
And then the last one is pure trust. Like, I just purely trust you with all my heart. Okay, so actually I was a little opposite. The first one is neutral trust, which is just sharing similar qualities. And then the second is contractual, which is like, I scratch your back if you scratch mine. And then there's mutual, which it helps goes both ways, and that you'll be there for each other. And then there's pure trust, which no matter what happens, you'll have each other's backs. And that's where like it becomes unconditional, basically. Like you could have pure trust with potentially, majority of the times we can say our parents, but a lot of us don't have good relationships with our parents, and that's okay. I think that when it comes to trust, it's just like we don't want to always like be too open to trusting someone, but also not be too like straight away from trusting someone, because when you're too open
or taking things too literal,
that too. When you're open, when you're too vulnerable, or I'd say like open to trusting someone, you become vulnerable to deception. Like, oh yeah, I just met someone. Oh yeah, they cool or whatever. Oh yeah, they seem trusting because my friend trusts them. So like, yeah, to a degree, depending on how much I trust this person. Like, let's say Tyler, if I trust you, whoever you trust, I might trust to a certain degree. But it doesn't mean that I should go off of it like off the bat. Like, yeah, I completely trust them. Because how they treat you is different how they could treat me. How they view you is different than how they view me. So it's just like, to a degree, you might go up the ladder of how much I would trust you. But even then, like, my personal belongings or anything that is attached to who I am could be different in how you handle it, depending on, like, how they handle it with you. So the relationship is also different because they've built a relationship within you. They didn't build a relationship with me. So that's another thing that we might have, like, not understanding of is like, okay, well, I have a real best friend. I'm cool with them. They have friends. I should trust them. And, well, not really, because you don't know how they are. And then also for the fact is, how much do you know your best friend that you are calling so that you could trust them? Like, their perception of trusting is on the same level as you? You know, everybody have a definition of something. So it's like, you have to be very conscious of like trusting someone, because at the end, that's where we get hurt the most.
Right.
We trust someone with love. If it is with anything, everything comes with trust. When we're in our workplace, when we're intimate, anything. And that's where we feel betrayed. That's when we get cheated. If we're talking about relationships in any form of way, we get stabbed in our back. We got people talking behind our backs. Then we get surprised. I'm like, oh my God, I never thought there would be this person. Well, like, in the beginning of a relationship of any form, like, you see a little bit of who they are. It's just that if you are aware of it, how they treat themselves, how they treat others is another thing. And a lot of people ignore those things and be like, oh, that's how they treat them, but they won't treat me like that because they never gave me that impression. Well, it's like, well, maybe you should think about it, because maybe you haven't done anything for them to be like that. So it's just like, you have to be very aware of how to trust. And that's why it's important. Like, we're talking about this, and I would love to get into like the stages of trust, how to trust, and like building from not trusting someone into trust them again, which is a whole topic to get into, because that is very hard. And it's like what I said, and Tyler was mentioning too, like, if we build this foundation like the Egyptians he was mentioning, is like, and someone is, you know, misguiding, or someone is like being careless, that's where, you know, the top of the pyramid is going to go all the way back down, and like, damn, we got to rebuild everything up, but now we have this mess.
That structure won't hold up much longer, because even if it can be completed, you won't know this slight abstract detail that, like, you know, this is potentially going to crumble down.
Exactly.
And as time envelops, you know, you are going to only acknowledge that as being there, but then it's like, it's not really a big deal. So now, because this person was careless, now that kind of rubbed off on you subconsciously, and because they were so careless, so like, and it's not really a big deal. Now your trust shifted from trusting them completely to trusting now their sense of judgment that this isn't a big deal. So now here you are being misguided by somebody that you should be trusting. And I kind of like what Angel was bringing up, because it reminded me back when I was a kid. So like, now we're going to talk about how, you know, the relationship with our parents, whether we trust our parents or not, and hopefully you do have some kind of healthy relationship with your parents. I remember my grandmother, she would trust me with the task, and it was just teaching me to see if I knew better. She's gonna go out, run errands, and she's trusting me to not open the door to nobody. I don't know how many of you have gotten that experience where they're testing you for that.
Don't open the door.
And the thing is, exactly, don't open the door to anybody. And now you think whether it's family or friends, especially family friends, the friends that are close to the family, you would think that they get the pass. And because you already trusted them, because you are familiar with their face, you know them, they talk to you, even though you're a kid, you trust them, right? And if they happen to knock on the door, which is a setup, my grandmother did this to me plenty of times, you would think that is going to be the right thing to do. Like, oh, okay, it's a family friend, like, you know, let them in real quick. They just wanted to see if the grandma was in there, whatever, And even if they don't come in the door, but the fact that you open the door, and you mistakenly think, okay, because you already had this sense of trust with this person, okay, so that means I'm good. I'm okay. I passed the test now. When my grandma comes, like, lollipops or allowance, whatever, whatever type of standards that family likes to reward people, right?
Yeah.
But then here comes my grandma, like, yo, no, excuse me for my language. What the hell did I tell you? Like, I thought I told you to not open the door to anybody, but like, it was your friend. Like, I thought it was okay. Like, when I said don't open the door to nobody, I meant to open the door to nobody. I told her to do that to see if you knew better. And it was like, now I was like, damn. So it's not even like I was lied to or whatever, but it was like, she trusted me to follow one simple, I won't say command, but one simple rule just while she was gone.
Right.
And I couldn't comply with that. And now I could have lost trust towards the family friend, but she was only doing what she was supposed to. So now it's just showing that, like, you know, my grandmother wanted to be able to trust me to follow that, and to a certain extent, she was capable of teaching me the foundation of trust. Like, just doing that one little thing, I was able to gain that trust for her. So now she's able to trust me at a young age to babysit the house when she's running errands, because not all the time am I going to be with somebody to watch me when I'm a young ass kid, or excuse me for my language. But at the same time, it's like, damn, like, it could be so, so unpredictable with how trust can be shown in different ways. And even as a kid, we are shown that, like, trust goes into different lengths of, like, what does it take to be able to build trust with somebody, especially with your parents.
Yeah, and I think like when someone's trying to trust you, like in your part, all you have to do is respect and what was the word?
Acknowledge. No, that kind of goes with respect. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
it is respect and being responsible. To be honest,
okay.
Like if you're gonna have someone trust you, you just have to respect them and be responsible for what you do.
Oh, and accountable,
Accountability. Yeah, because I think too, like if you're able to like. Yeah, if we're talking about accountability, like, you know, sometimes, like, you know, we might make mistakes. It happens, and it might merit into, like, someone not trusting you so much. But, you know, if you can be accountable and be like, hey, like, you know, this happened, or whatever it is, even if it's like, yo, I dropped your PB&J. I didn't want to let you know, but I didn't want you to find out, but I'm letting you know now before you find out. You telling me you dropped my PB&J?
I'm flabbergasted at, like, not even just as outlandish as the example is, but more so like,
I just wanted to tell
I would question. I wouldn't like let the trust go out the window completely. But if somebody was making me a sandwich and this was a good friend of mine, and they dropped my PB&J and then they told me, I know we're not wasting food, but it's like. What led you to be careless enough to even let the PB&J be dropped in the first place?
Well, honestly, I was like in a rush, so like I had my hand on the PB&J, but I had a couple things on my hand. Like I had you know, a couple things grasping, like a hug, and like I was trying to open the door. Okay, and when I was trying, like all I did was like it slipped out my hand and.
So it sounded like you stepped on it too. Like you tried to tell me you stepped on my sandwich.
No, like, bro, I promise.
Like,
I promise.
Like if anything, so you're telling me that okay, I understand that you were in a rush, and I can only imagine how it was holding all these things all together. But then it was like, why couldn't you trust yourself to be more responsible with your time? So that way you didn't feel like you had to rush in the first place.
Yeah, I know. Like I definitely learned that I could be a little bit more responsible with my time. So you know, on the flip side, I made you too. Here you go.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. He got that.
So like, that's a good example, right?
Yeah,
so like,
I think that's a great example.
I just think that, you know, when you could be accountable, like now, see, I didn't lose trust. Right. I told you that, you know, what happened, and you know, you asked me good, effective questions, and then I answered honestly. Honest.
And then look, mind you, let's just wait. Let's appreciate that ball drop he did. That moment of silence right there, I was not expecting that.
Yo, and I honestly love just making analogies, and we're obviously it's not to be so serious if we're talking about PB&J. It's just a good example about like, you know, it could be anything serious. It's just about being effective with communication, because that is going to be one thing that upholds trust. Like if you feel like someone might lose trust because of something you may have done, it's good to let someone else know before they find out for themselves, because then that's where they actually will lose trust, because they had to find out.
Yep.
Honestly, like as much as we could talk about trust, and like stages of trust and everything else that pertain to it, I think it's good to like, you know, come into a conclusion. So I want to see if there's anything you want to conclude before we end this.
Well, like I could definitely say, even going further back into earlier in the video, like where you mentioned how there's different type of characteristics that one may have, and one thing I wanted to include, so this could be like the sixth wonder that I want to mention. So another characteristic that goes along with trust, that I mean, if anything, we've been exemplifying on that, is a feeling that comes with trust. And if anything, this is your intuition. You have the feeling like, I feel like I could trust you, because trust can be a feeling, but trust can also be a characteristic where it, once again, it's a staple to like what molds a relationship, because without trust, like that relationship can't flourish, because if I can't trust you, and then I'm not even taking the time to acknowledge that I can't trust you, I'm not only setting myself up for failure, setting up this friendship or relationship up for failure, and setting you up for failure. Right. And then there's a disappointment that goes back and forth, and now we're creating this toxic cycle of negativity, and now it's like we're creating this senseless form of hate or dislike because this person did this to me, and now my whole trust is messed up and everything like that. And if there's definitely some things that I want to mention as we're concluding this, it's just different behaviors that we could look out for in people or in ourselves that shows that, you know, we may ourselves may be lacking trust, or the people in front of us that we surround ourselves by or that we're getting to know may be lacking of trustworthiness. And people that always assume the worst, you know, people that always assume the worst are always going to be strictly driven by like, okay, this is the worst case scenario, and then just going off of that. So they are trying to prevent this from happening rather than rather than preparing themselves properly. And it's kind of like how if Angel was to offer me something, and then because he offered me something, and let's say I kindly accept, but then now I get into this rumination process where I feel as if, or I'm expecting that he wants something back from me. So because I'm expecting something, now I'm thinking the worst, and it could be something where I'm expecting him to expect me to do something of that same magnitude to meet him on that wavelength. That suspiciousness, you're basically on edge. You are on thin ice, thin line of hair, yarn, barn, anything like that, and you are not going to be able to take things for what they are, and you're going to suspect if somebody is malicious towards you, because those intentions you may never know. I mean, don't judge a book by its cover once again, but be mindful of like how people talk to you, how people act around you, how they act when they're not around you. You know, I would love respect. Do not talk about me behind my back, and like exactly how someone may act behind closed doors when they're with you and when they're not with you says a lot. Self-sabotage, this can be a topic within itself. I'm just saying that it really could be, but because of bad history with trust, one may end something that's actually good for them, because ending it now is better than being disappointed later. And a lot of times, you know, trust, or at least the history of mistrust, can be haunting on who we are in the present and at least in our future. Because think about being in a good relationship with someone, and like you guys just started dating, and because things are looking too good, you cut it off right then and there, because like, nah, there's no way I have something this good after what I've been through. You know what I mean? So things like that, like it could be very traumatizing and demoralizing, building relationships. Unhealthy relationships, trust issues make it extremely difficult to form healthy bonds. So once again, you need trust. You desire trust. It is imperative that we have trust in every relationship that we have, because it's just important. Distancing yourself, avoiding relationships to decrease the chances of disappointment. Why isolate yourself? Putting yourself in solitude is not something that is, how should I say this? It's not something that's very effective to anybody in life, because the more that we're alone, the more that we experience grief, mistrust, and actually, what's another one that I said? And also regret, because then we become regretful on a lot of things, and we just end up in this ruminating process that constantly keeps happening. And last but not least, focusing on the negative. Anybody's bias, their opinion, anything like that, if you're talking to somebody and like you're telling them something about a situation or whatever, and or any conversation, and their approach is always negative, then it's like, how could you really trust that person? Their outlook is always negative, and as I mentioned earlier, they are trying to prevent something that already happened, something that they cannot control anymore. They're trying to prevent this or something similar from happening again, rather than preparing, as we mentioned in the Egyptians example, rather than preparing for the next time and being better for the future, moving on forward. Because there's always going to be trial and error, and whether it's in the scientific method on creating a hypothesis, getting your research, and then studying like what is probably going to be the most effective test or anything like that, and then concluding your results altogether, and like, you know what, this is the best categorical thing that we can conclude to, rather than just being on this, like, it looks like it's okay, but then there's all these pondering what ifs that are like, if it leaves you scratching your head, then it's like, why even have so much faith in this when you have something right next to it that's a lot more dependable?
Right. Yeah, I think that's great. As far as like mentioning all the behaviors to watch out for as far as trusting someone, I think that's important. So I hope everyone got something from that, because, you know, we can learn about what trust is, but also be mindful of what kind of behaviors we should look out for. So to not even try to even build trust with these kind of people, because it's not to say like, you know, is incapable of doing so, but it's to show like, you know, if it is going to be something you want to do, it's going to have a lot of intensive work, a lot of tolerance, a lot of patience, and, you know, just trying to figure them out and stuff like that. So, a lot of times people are stuck in their ways, and that happens, and sometimes you just gotta let it go. As far as trusting someone, when you was mentioning it a little bit in the beginning, it's just like, you know, if you're gonna trust someone, and if we're talking about building trust, and I'm not gonna get too much into it, that's where we were talking about like letting go of grudges, and if you're gonna try to build up from trusting someone again, you gotta let go from the past and just have a clean slate and be like, yeah, I know this is what happened, but if we're still here, you gotta let go of what it was, because if anything, we're here for the reason of trying to make things better, not to keep reminding ourselves of what was worse. So, I really appreciate you guys. Honestly, like, this is something that me and Tyra love doing. We're trying to grow together. We're trying to learn together and do this as a unity, because there's no community without that. And
no community without unity.
Exactly.
Say it, Lord.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna say it again. There is no community with no unity. So I just think that we are here together because we understand the form of what a rally cry is, to come together, to express ourselves, to come into understanding. And if there's anything that was resonating with you, share this with a friend. If it's your mom, your dad, your friend, your sister, your brother, your grandma, your auntie, your cousin, it don't matter.
Don't forget Uncle.
Yeah, you can share it to him as long as you have a strong relationship with them. But without further ado, just remember that when it comes to trusting someone, it is always to be earned, not given. So until next time, y'all be easy.
Y'all stay breezy.
Peace.